I'm going to start off. I've been working in two different silos. I've been working with Thomas, who's on the call here, and with Pete Dumont to try to connect the service that Thomas provides with TenantView. Is he provides surety support and surety bonds for construction contracts. And Pete is working on construction contracts in the silo of contractors. And so I need to connect these two. So thank you both for being on the call.
Yeah, I would love to connect. And, a little bit about, I'll just tell you a little bit, since you kind of teased it there, Dixon, in the presentation. So with the OS2 research and development project, we are in the process of designing this ecosystem concept you talked about right at the end there, Dixon. And the idea here is to really have a healthier business climate for asset developers and those that deliver them. And this is taking the form of what we've called putting together neighborhoods of companies. And we use that kind of cornbread weekend language of neighborhood because most people understand what one of those is, where basically companies have individual identities and business goals, profit objectives and such, but you're part of a greater thing, something with a long-term outlook that transcends any individual project. And it's a long-term relationship, and it consists of many firms. So some of you on the call might be familiar with IPD, Integrated Project Delivery. Dixon put up the consensus docs earlier. Consensus docs 300 is the standard form IPD. If you have some familiarity with that, you'll understand the neighborhood. But we're taking it in two additional dimensions. One, we're going much deeper in the supply chain. One of our hypotheses is, could you create a shared risk-reward contractual arrangement between tens or even hundreds of companies, as opposed to single-digit IPD arrangements today? Two, take it long-term. IPD today is about one project at a time. We're really looking at a long-term participation of different companies in the supply chain. And the neighborhoods could create gravity and form around different sectors, like solar, perhaps different regions, perhaps specific clients. Some clients that are getting interested in this are in the data center space, heavy industrial oil and gas, healthcare. So there's a lot of construction sectors that are looking at this. And so imagine multiple architects and engineers, multiple contractors, multiple electrical subs, multiple suppliers of pipe, steel, solar panels, whatever the case may be, involved in a common ecosystem together. So that's the big idea. To make it work, obviously you have to have trust and transparency. This is where blockchain comes in. Most of what you talked about, Dixon, is really, really well suited to be on a blockchain platform where you have, transactions that are visible to all parties simultaneously, high level of cryptography. We can use multi-party computation, secure sovereign information to make sure that information applied there could be maintained to the extent required from a confidentiality standpoint, but then also have the benefits of that be able to be provided to all the members of the neighborhood. And so, in everything you talked about could be is really, really well suited for blockchain. So I think there could be a good marriage there between these efforts. So with that, I'll shut up and just kind of want to give you guys a quick highlight of the stuff we're working on. And our group, Prairie Dog, is the one facilitating and leading this stuff in the industry. We're putting the first implementations in the market now in collaboration with the University of Texas and CII, which is heading up the research.
Yeah, and I would add the slide deck that everybody will get. You'll have the links to those, so you can research them and reach out to Pete directly. One other comment I should add is, Pete's working across silos, across infrastructure projects, which is really key. But the other thing that's important is XBRL is actually a financial reporting standard. So you're going to have other data standards which are much more specific and granular, like the IEC and the IEEE. XBRL does not replace those. We're not going to try to be the data standard for every piece of data that's out there, but rather the common data elements for the financial markets is XBRL. And those financial markets may look to, the IEC and the IRC, which I'm so happy George Kelly is on the call, because there's a huge amount of effort that's been done to create data standards for that kind of granular information. And knowing what you're doing as a financial partner, you may want those granular pieces of information, in which you'd look to those standards for that information, not XBRL. And I don't know if George wanted to touch base on that. I would welcome that, or if anybody had any questions.
Yeah, Dixon, I could just say that one example of that is the PV system performance monitoring standard, where we have defined a lot of, electrical terms, but we did manage to get all of those into the orange button taxonomy, I think. So we're trying to keep it as seamless as possible.
Yeah, George, you've been on this 2 or 3 weeks now, right?
Yeah. Or 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you so much for a really wonderful discussion. And I have to put my apologies out. This is totally new to me. So my question will seem more naive, and it's not just a question to you, but to your colleagues. And it relates on the brainstorming issue. My background in the research suggests that there is a link between better real-time information and real-time risk management. So taking your terminology, has the increase in granularity in your data collection also been accompanied with an increase in the real-time nature of the information, such that somebody can go in there, if you will, and actually make a real-time estimate of changing probabilities of failure?
Yeah, I would say the real time has been most successfully implemented in the solar space because they are tracking solar system performance down into the seconds. And it really is important on a bigger scale because the utility has to do it for load maintenance, but also the investor itself really wants to know how their system is performing. So that real time is there. I can't say that the financial markets, as far as the insurance, surety, and some of the other secondary players, are looking at that data, because frankly, it just seems to be very sort of out there and futuristic than it is real. And one of the things we're trying to do with the Orange Button collaboration is to try to make it to the financial markets that it is real, and then you can use it for underwriting. Now, when we look at timeliness, Caltrans is a perfect example. We can monitor, I think it's $15 billion of construction over 4,000 contracts with that dashboard, but it's a monthly update. It's not real time, but a monthly is fast enough for a lot of performance on construction maintenance. As it goes into other infrastructure areas, it all depends on where the measurement and monitoring is to determine what the response to that information would be. And so a lot of it cannot be real time. There'll always be some delay, but it all depends on, the different silos and different needs. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, our case studies available. Yeah, that's actually what we're doing with PG&E, is to try to use that pilot. Now we have to get approval from the California Public Utility Commission to provide on-bill. But if we can get that authority, then we're going to try to do a pilot to see if we can't implement that and create case studies where we can bring in low-cost capital because we can demonstrate the risk management, change the pricing model. Other real case, I think individual banks, Wells Fargo has been a leader in using this underwriting. I know Jan Rippingale has done a lot of success in helping develop the data standards at the beginning of a project, from the permit, even before that, to the AHJ. So there are successes. And Jan, if you wanted to talk a little bit about the effort with the AHJ and Solar App.
So I was actually thinking a little bit about what Pete was saying about neighborhoods. And one of the key elements for doing this successfully has been setting up reference data. So we've got the data definitions with Orange Button, but then actually having reference data sets that immediately add value to anybody who's using them, like the full list of AHJ and their contact information and their polygon shapes, so you can figure out where you're located within your AHJ, for instance. It takes a difficult analysis job away from a whole bunch of people. They don't have to determine which AHJ it is that they're getting their permits in. And has led to this neighborhood effect. So Solar App is using that to define their AHJs and then to indicate whether or not this specific AHJ uses Solar App. And then the NABCEP inspection questions, you've got a set of permitting questions that go with Solar App, and then the NABCEP inspection questions can actually get closer to alignment, and they can be specific to what an AHJ's requirements are. And then the people doing training are interested in saying, if you've got this question, this is why the building code exists this way, and this is how you actually address that concern. And so by starting with the AHJ reference data set, which solved one specific task that needed to get done that's complicated, we've incorporated and added these kind of adjacent interests into the industry and started, to build some momentum and make progress. I'm expecting that we're going to do the exact same thing with the product registry, which is going to be modeled off the AHJ registry. And, if we can get that off the ground and get everyone participating in the way that needs to happen, but the CEC has said theoretically they would much rather have the product registry maintained by somebody else and the manufacturers verifying that the information is correct and having a place where we can expand it in all the ways that designers and everybody wants that to work. And then we're immediately delivering value. So if you just look at the structure of Orange Button, it is difficult to see how you're going to immediately deliver value. But if you've got these reference data sets tied to it, then you've got something immediately usable for somebody, and it's a carrot that you can just pull them all in and set your neighborhood around. So that's kind of been our experience so far about the best ways to get adoption.
Jan, if you would touch base on one element that I get here all the time, and again, I'm a business user, not a technical person. XBRL is about a 20-year-old technology, and one of its strengths is it's really inclusive, and it's a big structure, and it is kind of bulky in that regard. But it does provide that data definition, that apples to apples. Jan, could you touch base on working outside of XBRL? Because you're looking at using the XBRL, but not in its entirety. You're not sending an XBRL file.
So we are doing an open API JSON version of the system. In XBRL, you've got primitives so that you actually always know your data value and which precision and accuracy it might have and which units apply. So that we've identified and the timeframes. So there's 6 primitives that go on any XBRL element, and we're keeping those 6 primitives in our JSON objects. So in that way, they're interoperable. But because we can actually find and hire JSON developers in abundance, we're able to make a lot more progress much more quickly. And for JSON developers, we literally have a mechanism where we just create sample JSON. So they can look at the object and they can look at the spec and they can see the other data definitions, but they kind of don't care. They just look at the JSON object with some sample data, and then they move ahead and program it the way it's supposed to be. And I don't know exactly if that's saying that programmers like to have barriers around put on their blinders or what, but what we found is that we've got rapid data adoption. So we're using the site as our main object, and a site can have an address and different contact information, and then a site can have many PV systems, it can have many battery systems. So site is our main object that we're using right now, and we've been able to connect from an ERP system to a system that's just giving an app for project status for homeowners. And then we've got another way of using site that goes to a different app that lets homeowners do referrals and send them back in with another site object. And for doing a permit with Solar App, we're going to send the site object with all of the different bill of materials and the more detailed information about what they need for the permit. So we've got this one object that is got multiple use cases, and Solar Success and Blue Banyan is connecting to all of them. So we need to build that API once, and we can connect with 3 different software providers now. So it's been really exciting to see this grow. And we've been able to have new software providers look at that, and it pre-solves all their problems, because they're like, what do I do when you've got different bill of material restrictions, or what do I do when you've got different bill of services? And it's already solved in that site object. So we're actually accelerating development even when it's brand new to the software company. So it's been really great that way.
I just wanted to add to what was just said about the confidentiality, but I see that Pete is making the same comment more or less than what I wanted to add. That thanks to blockchain technology, basically you can decide which information you want to share with who, and sometimes you can store a public proof of consensus or agreement on some data without sharing the data themselves. So it's where it comes and what it's providing the transparency, confidentiality, and what is really granting is the sharing of information in real time to all stakeholders, which is really important. Then you can decide which information to share with who. Thanks.
Okay. I'm just gonna echo those comments. And somebody asked a question. I think one of the questions about use case. Not related to solar, but there is active use case around this in upstream oil and gas now, when using this kind of live empirical field data now to feed blockchain-based systems now to prevent blowouts and failures in drilling operations, and to use this AI and predictive analytics to determine basically a blowout is going to occur before it actually occurs, and then alert the various operators in drilling operations before that happens. And again, enable through this use of a couple of things, technology and then the better arrangement of companies, you lower the risk profile for the companies and for that entire enterprise dramatically. And it's already manifesting in insurance cost reductions in the range of 25 to 50%, because the insurers have much higher visibility into the operation and know that the people operating these assets are using data now to ultimately prevent losses. So there are some things happening. Happy to provide more information if anyone's curious about what's happening in that space.
Yeah, I think blockchain and the whole smart contracts has got huge implications for efficiency. And so it's our data that affects competitive business intelligence handled and secured. I will go back to my Outlook example. If I have an address in Outlook and I forward it to you and you put it in your Outlook or Google Notes or whatever it is, how you use that data in your system, that's in your system. So your intelligence, how you use it, how you apply AI, that's all in your system. The fact that you exchange data does not mean that how you use the data is an open book. It's not. This is just a data exchange. And you're right, I could exchange my permit information with a bank, with two different banks. One may be very sophisticated to look at it, and the other one may not. It's the same data. People will do what they do with it differently, and that will create the competitive advantage. The idea of data interoperability is to promote competitive advantages, not to make everybody the same.
And we're just starting. What's cool is that this is just creeping into the construction industry now, and it's just the sky's the limit as far as how we can use this technology and make much more streamlined contractual relationships and take a lot of the friction out. You may or may not be aware, but on the average capital project, about 40% of the dollars are wasted on transactional friction in the supply chain. Largely because people don't trust each other. We have onerous contracts with, unfair risk shifting across different party boundaries. It's hierarchical. Everyone hires everyone else, and you got multiple layers of markup upon markup in this. So we got to flatten the supply chain while also making it more efficient. Again, technology-enabled ability to do that now. So yeah, it's a good time to be in our industry, right? There's a lot of cool things that are going to be unfolding over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I might add on that, a lot of infrastructure is public, but with the smart grid being financed from the private sector, the constraints of the public sector, because you just don't get the change in public works, how projects are procured, put out to bid, and managed. In the private sector, you could be much more faster. So, Pete's work in the energy space, and our goal with working in the energy space, hopefully the government will look at it and see best practices and help move toward it.
Mm.
So let's go back to some of the questions. Environmental permitting. Right now, the solar app is for just the solar permit, but obviously the permit for a solar is got the basis of any construction permit or anything else. And I would imagine as the success of the solar permit process starts to take hold, you'll start to see it go into different silos of the permit process. And hopefully environmental permitting will look at the successes of the solar permitting and incorporate that and bring it into the environmental side as well.
Dixon, you and I talked about, potential collaboration down the road, maybe some workshops or seminars. From the discussion here, I am beyond excited at the opportunity we have to make some meaningful advancements within the risk management world, pretty much across all infrastructure domains. So for me, I see this as a great conversation starter. And I would look for ways for us to continue the conversation, grow the audience, help develop these case studies so that people kind of, they learn by seeing. The web stuff is nice, but I think in person is a little better for idea exchange and all that stuff. So I would be interested in maybe we target a fall workshop. We've got lots of real estate at Berkeley. If folks are interested in coming out here, we can also try and partner up with the Energy Institute. But let's get together as a group and formalize this and try and advance it, because I only see positive things coming out of this notion as opposed to negative things.
Yeah, I definitely think, and again, the digital surety bond is my little silo. What's good about it is it is a document that multiple stakeholders want to have. In a solar project, the panel provider is protected by the payment bond. So him having a copy of the payment bond would help the supply chain. The project owner is protected by the performance bond, the lender. So that's a financial document that can be shared with multiple stakeholders. But I think from my conversations, the thing that has created the most interest is blockchain and smart contracts. Because really, it's the contract that's the nucleus of the ecosystem. And so I would, if we're going to do a workshop, I would suggest that we kind of focus it around smart contracts and how it becomes a nucleus.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm not sure if we have the time or someone wants to do it, but the blockchain notion is foreign to me. So I don't know if there's a quick little high level overview that someone would be willing to give. But yeah, I see a lot of potential there, because there's a lot of challenge with confidentiality and all that stuff, and it seems like this is a nice way to address those anxieties.
Hey, Rune, on this isn't a plug, it's just an easy way to get to it, but on our website, and I put our link up there on the resources page, there's a handy link to a short YouTube video. It's only like 5 minutes long. It's a kind of a blockchain for dummies, quick overview, right? That's just a little give you a little flavor for what it is, and it's in layman's speak, so it's not complicated or anything like that. But I'll just give you kind of my view of it, and I'm just a dumb engineer, so I hopefully can explain it fairly simply. But everyone knows what a database is, right? A database, we all have them in our businesses, and they've been referred to here. So you can think of a database as a vertical house that stores information. It's a vertical silo, right? It may be on the cloud, but someone owns that database. Someone controls it, usually a company. And the information in there is the property or whatever of a company, or whatever. But the problem with databases, as we all have probably experienced, is they're susceptible to failure. Maybe viruses, perhaps, maybe malfeasance. Somebody gets in, changes information, they get corrupted, and so forth. And they're owned by one party. The governance of a database is whoever owns it. Blockchain, if you can envision now, is a horizontal distribution of data across multiple computers that replicate each other. So, Rune, if you wanted to go in and change a piece of information, all the other computers would see that attempted change and cry foul and essentially not allow it to occur. So it's basically, they call it a distributed ledger. So the information in it's distributed across multiple computers. And so so that technology is powerful then to have basically trusted information on it, because you know whatever's recorded on the blockchain was factual at the time and date it was recorded. Okay. And they call it immutable, meaning you can't change it. Now, if information needs to be revised or updated, fine, you just write another block. And those blocks tie to prior blocks. So blocks of information build on each other, hence blockchain. It's a chain of sequential blocks of information that build. And so it's kind of known to be somewhat, kind of the best cryptography, best security of any data solutions in the world today. And that's why they use it for cryptocurrency. And, they're using it in healthcare now to track COVID vaccines. I mean, there's all kinds of uses for blockchain, from simple to complicated. So that's kind of an easy way to think about it. It kind of becomes the trusted intermediary between parties. It starts to take the place. Like, if you ever bought a house, we probably all have. Who's that? Who manages that transaction? The title company. Why is the title company needed? Well, the title company is needed because somebody needs to verify the ownership of that property, right? You can't just trust that the buyer and seller can't inherently trust each other. So there's an intermediary in between them that validates the veracity of the transactional history of that property, and that it's validly owned by the seller and no one else has a stake in it, all that. So all that eventually will get replaced by blockchain. Much the same way, power of attorney, lawyers, intermediaries like that, same type of thing. It kind of fills that role of the trusted transactional host between two parties. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think that was perfect, but indeed, if you want to have a follow-up session, for me, it will be difficult to travel until the health restrictions are over, but I'd be happy to join as soon as I can. But maybe a presentation could be given on how it really fits into this specific use case and how it contributes to risk management overall.
Right. That's a good idea.
You bet. And again, I want to big a shout out to my Orange Button colleagues. We come from all different parts of the silo. Most of us are volunteering on that Orange Button committee to bring public benefit. And so them attending the meeting today, I really appreciate it. I thank you very much. And I hope that we can contribute to UC Berkeley's dialogue and the platform you provide to bring solutions together by bringing different people from different places. And then it looks like I have one last question, and then we're going to close it out. How are storm risk modeled to address catastrophic risks? And I can share that there are people that are part of the Orange Button, one of the climate service, which is actually looking at climate data and applying it as a data analytical tool for the construction and property maintenance and whatnot. And you're going to start to see climate data and the impact of future climate events be part of risk modeling. And I'm happy to share a link to that company if anybody wanted to send me a specific request. And John,
I have a quick comment on that. Yeah. So at least for solar and wind, storm modeling is not very advanced from the insurance and in the insurance industry. And I think the reason that is, those are relatively technologies, so they're not like 80 decades old or 100-year old, like trains. So what we found is that insurers don't do a good job modeling storm risk for those asset classes, particularly because they don't have models that represent the resiliency of those asset classes, the strength of those asset classes to resist different levels of storms, like hailstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, things like that. And so that's some of the work that I've been working on with a company called VDE America, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we're not actually able to get sufficient catastrophic peril insurance, particularly for windstorms and hail on renewable energy projects. So we have to, we've been using models with model
John, your
represents the
bandwidth is cutting up.
solar power project actually, to basically figure out how to self-insure. So I can provide more information to anyone interested in that.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining in the call. It was a pleasure meeting all of you guys visual or virtually, and stay tuned for further collaborations.